Hello friends, welcome back to The Fallout. Let's not mess about, let's get straight into it because this Arsenal side is not backing down. They're going to go all the way, or attempt to at the very least. Two very tricky games, the Chelsea game and then the Newcastle game, and they've made it through with 6 points. Newcastle 0, Arsenal 2, the XG 1.28 to 1.18 for Arsenal. So Newcastle winning that one, and this was a game of missed opportunities for Newcastle, but Arsenal also missed some fantastic chances. But there was one player on the pitch who made a huge difference, an incredible signing for Arsenal. They sort of waited in the wings for quite some time, but I thought Jorginho's performance was absolutely key for Arsenal in this one. Not only keeping their flow going, but also in making sure that their attackers weren't isolated. Jorginho made 42 successful passes in the match, which is more than any other Arsenal player. But also, importantly, received the ball from the back line 27 times, which was a huge factor in their ability to play through Newcastle in this one at St James's Park. It was a feisty game, and if we ever look at the average positions for Arsenal, we can see that the 4 forward-thinking players of Arsenal are quite far ahead of the defence and the rest of the midfield. At times, this has been a problem for Arsenal, as opposition teams have cut off the passing lanes from Partey to Odegaard and to the forwards as well. Great example of that was the Everton game. Sean Dyche, I think it was his first game where they beat Arsenal. They were able to sort of really stifle Arsenal in that one. But thanks to Jorginho's passing range and vision, it meant that the forwards of Arsenal were able to stay high and find space in transition to target the Newcastle defence. Martinelli was one of the beneficiaries of this. Martinelli had an excellent game. He had 3 shots. He made 3 successful dribbles and created 2 key passes as well in the game. And Arsenal were able to keep him high, which forced mistakes from Fabian Schär, as he was often operating without his back to goal and having to move into uncomfortable defensive positions. I thought Newcastle were generally unlucky, actually, not to at least score. But the truth of the matter is that they didn't create enough for Isaac and Wilson. Neither of them had a shot on target in the match, and that came from an excellent defensive display from Arsenal. I thought Arsenal were really impressive in terms of keeping their shape, and someone who did have an excellent game though for Newcastle, because it was tight. It was a really tight game. It was a really good game, nice competitive feisty one. But I thought Joe Willock was fantastic. He was the only Newcastle midfielder who had a good game, in my opinion. Willock upheld a 94% pass accuracy, made 3 successful dribbles, and also provided 2 key passes in the match. And I thought his positioning was also really intelligent in picking up the ball in areas behind Odegaard. I think his performances lately have actually made it very difficult for him to be replaced this summer, and I think he has to be one of the first names on the team sheet now for Newcastle. It's going to be a very difficult summer for Newcastle, and it would have to be a very ruthless decision to bring in a player to replace him, because Joe Willock is providing the idea, at least, that he's got a very high ceiling and is capable of being in a side that can get this Newcastle side out of a Champions League group, because I think that's obviously going to be the aim, I think, going into next season. I'm thinking of doing a video on Newcastle and the changes they could make in the next 3 transfer windows. We've actually done that for Liverpool and for Man United. If you want to check those out, you can. But if you want that Newcastle video, do me a favour. Let's get this video to 2,000 likes. Hit the subscribe button as well if you're new. Trying to get myself to 250,000 subscribers, and obviously I need you guys to click it if you've been watching for a while and you do enjoy the content, get something out of it. Do me a favour and hit that button, and hit that like button if you'd like that Newcastle video, because I'll know then. Bournemouth 1, Chelsea 3, 1.29 to 1.35 for Bournemouth. Those who watch this game will know that the scoreline doesn't necessarily tell the whole story here. But there is a lot to discuss for both sides, and plenty of positives actually for each team, which is something we haven't been able to say about Chelsea for a hell of a long time. And starting off with Chelsea, they secured their first win under Lampard, and there are some good points here as well, but defensively, they did struggle. They struggled to apply pressure to the Bournemouth midfield despite playing a higher line, and this meant that Bournemouth were able to create attacks relatively easily and commit to allowing their players to take up high advanced positions. The reason for this is because they knew that there was little chance that Chelsea would win a turnover. We can see in this screenshot how much time Senesi has to pick out Ouattara, who is already on the move. Ouattara won 4 of his 6 aerial duels against Chelsea, and it was a clear weak point for Chelsea and a focus of Bournemouth's play throughout the game. However, there were some positives for Chelsea, the score, obviously, but also Noni Madueke's performance. Now, I know Chelsea won the game, but Bournemouth did have their number for most of it. Bournemouth had an expected assist of 1.74, whilst Chelsea only had 0.95. So I think it's better that we focus on the genuine positive for Chelsea, and that is Noni Madueke. Firstly, His heat map is something I don't think we've seen from many Chelsea players this season. And what we're seeing is genuine width. It gave him ample opportunity to receive the ball and then drive at that Bournemouth defence, which that's what he's best at, right? Madueke completed 6 dribbles in the 76 minutes that he played. And I think it's really refreshing to see this from a Chelsea player. This gives Chelsea options going forward, in my opinion, as it may allow them to play a system with wingers to some effect. So a 4-3-3 may be a viable option if they can address the lack of engagement in midfield that they had against this Bournemouth side. Bournemouth continued to impress me. They used the long ball effectively, got the ball forward quickly as well, but they also had some fast-paced, intricate football in the final third, and their goal was a clear example of how effective they can be going forwards. I think in Matthias Viña, they have a really exciting technical left-back who can be an excellent source of secondary attack. By secondary attack, I mean someone who isn't necessarily part of the attack, but is also someone who goes unnoticed in the latter stages of play and picks up some interesting spaces in the final third due to being that spare man. He had 3 shots on target against Chelsea, and with no wingers tracking back, he was often an overload option for Bournemouth. He was fantastic. Man City right at the top and looking strong. 2-1 victory against Leeds, 2.57 XG to 0.23. Man City are now on a 10-match winning streak. This is the game that showed exactly why Man City are a team of monsters, in my opinion, and why there was never any way that Arsenal were going to be able to keep the pace with them. I know they're trying everything in their power, but it just feels a little bit feeble at this point. It does, doesn't it? Does anyone have any feeling like they're going to slip up? Man City, I can't see it personally. And it's usually one of the megastars that steals the show for Man City, be that Haaland or De Bruyne, but this match showed just how much quality flows through this side and how any of them can be a match winner. Firstly, I want to give credit to Rico Lewis, who came into the team and slotted into the role that Rodri has become synonymous with brilliantly. And before we take a look at the stats for him, I want to pinpoint how important he was in the first and second phase of play. When in the defensive half, he was a prominent source of possession for City, but in the attacking phase, he was actually equally important for retaining possession and being that source of dominance. The important part about Rodri's game is that he's the only player in the Man City team that stays still, which makes him so crucial in City's system. This is why Rico Lewis being in the same position constantly is really, really important. He's always an option. And whilst this is true for the majority of his game, there were also excellent examples of him moving forward and getting into those advanced positions. Lewis had 102 touches against Leeds and completed 86 passes. We were talking about Jorginho earlier. He was at 47, was it? I might have got that wrong, but it's 40-something, right? Late 40s. 86 passes during this match. But now we have to talk about the ludicrous display put in by Gundogan. This guy is being slept on this season once again, just because, you know, there's other players who are getting the plaudits and goals, and we can go after him today, if you know what I mean. But the amount of times he creates stuff for Grealish and Haaland and everyone else through his movement or awareness or vision it's just constant. He's so important. Gundogan had a total of 193 touches and made 171 passes. To put into context how crazy this is, not only is it the most passes completed by a Premier League player this season, but it's also 51 more passes than the whole of the Leeds team managed. Now for the goals. Both his goals were a carbon copy of each other, and both brilliant for that reason. Look at the vertical movement from the Man City players here. It's important as it pens the Leeds low block into the box. This is where Gundogan's intelligence is key. His awareness and reading of the game allows him to slow it down and create space for himself simply by allowing the Leeds defenders to vacate the space for him. The fact that he did this twice just shows how clever a player he is. Fool me once, they fooled him twice, didn't they? So maybe they are stupid. I don't think so. I think Gundogan's just a joke. For Leeds, I think we saw what we all expected from an Allardyce side. Leeds now have 3 matches left this season, and I'm not sure if the Allardyce effect can be fully drawn out in that time. The next match is Newcastle at home too, so it doesn't get any easier for them. The thing I'm struggling with is the personnel. I don't feel like you have the personnel there at Leeds to do what Allardyce wants in such a short period of time. Should they have stuck with Gracia? Is it worth rolling the Allardyce? I don't know. But it feels desperate, doesn't it, for Leeds? If you think Leeds are going to stay up, let me know in the comments down below. If not, how are you feeling about that? Tottenham 1, Palace 1, 0.88 to 0.36 in this absolutely iconic barnstorming classic. No, but Tottenham got a win, which is what they needed. Have Tottenham just found their ideal defence here? Maybe. Let me know, Tottenham fans, how you feel about this one. They have struggled at the back massively with the back four and with the back three this season. But what they did in this game, it might be the first clue in how they are going to solve their problems from this season for next season. The back three of Tottenham was made up of Emerson, Romero and Longley. And whilst I don't think that Longley is the answer, I really think that having Romero in the middle is something that they need to stick with, as he's a natural defender, and having him in the middle makes a lot more sense than on the right because of his tendency to give away fouls when defending in those wide areas. Emerson as the right centre-back is something I want to focus on here, because you can see from his heat map here that he was in possession in fairly wide areas at times, which meant that Pedro Porro could hold a higher position, which gave Spurs four attackers in a sense and gave them important width. It's this width that saw Kane get his goal, but also saw Pedro Porro have a few chances within the match himself. Defensively, I think Emerson as the right-sided centre-back is also a wise move, as he's comfortable defending in those wide areas, which has been a problem for Spurs this season. He won 66 of his challenges and made a total of 3 tackles and interceptions against Zaha, which obviously is not the easiest of opponents to come up against. And what this means for Spurs is that they can create a somewhat asymmetric back four that still resembles a back three to a point. And I think the nuance behind it and how it works for the whole squad has to be a positive for Spurs and for Ryan Mason, who deserves credit for the ingenuity behind it. And this could be something the new manager carries on with, as it looks balanced whilst also allowing players to play in comfortable positions. Pedro Porro made 4 key passes, registered 1 assist and took 2 shots against Palace due to this system giving him that license to bomb on. He looked like he really enjoyed it, and making sure he's allowed to do this is important for Spurs from now until the end of the season, as he looks to be one of their most useful players after Kane right now. For Palace, I think it's time for them to realise that Hodgson's gravy train probably has its limitations. They were good at times and did create some good chances on the counter-attack through the brilliance of Eze and Elise. And between now and the end of the season, what will be. But they need to probably focus on who that new manager is going to be and getting them signed, sealed and delivered before you get too deep into a summer transfer window. Because there's a lot of decisions to be made here when it comes to Crystal Palace. I think it's a solid squad, but you're going to be losing some stardust in Zaha, who, every year scores 12 goals. That's a big miss. I know he's been injured for a lot of the season so far, but also it's quite a light squad as well in terms of quality, and so there needs to be some changes, and you want it to be aligned with the manager and how he wants to play. In terms of the new manager, there have been some strong links with Arne Slot, Feyenoord manager, but nothing is confirmed yet, it seems. They also have the problem that Spurs are also on the hunt for a gaffer as well, and so are half the league by the looks of things. Wolves 1, Aston Villa 0, 0.76 XG for Wolves, 1.48 for Aston Villa, and has been in the top 4 race taken its toll on Villa just a little bit. And is it a learning opportunity for next season so that they're ready to have a proper go for those European places? Of course, it's not over yet. Keep bloody fighting. And actually, their XG was much higher than Wolves in this one. But despite losing this match 1-0 and not scoring in consecutive matches, I don't think Villa were that bad in this one. As I said, they had an XG of 1.48 and they did create chances, 16 shots. But the problem was that they fell to the wrong people. Only 3 shots on target in this one. And I think the problem here was that it highlights that Villa need to add some more potency in the window. This match showed that when Ollie Watkins doesn't take the chances, then it becomes difficult for Villa. And John Duran came on in the 81st minute, but I don't think he's quite ready for the pressure of Premier League football as a striker just yet. The good thing about this is that it gives Villa an idea of where they need to strengthen this summer, and due to having a good base already, it does give them a platform in which they can cultivate a team and keep the project going under Emery. For Wolves, I think the term consistency has to be in their minds. Last week, they got pumped 6-0 by Brighton, but then they followed up with a very solid defensive performance against an informed Villa team. I thought Totti Gomez had a standout game. He played at left-back, but is naturally a centre-back. But I thought what worked well for Wolves was their ability to make their back four narrow and compact, which helped to limit Villa's threat, with them also being a narrow team, especially in attack. We can see how narrow Gomez was when looking at his touches in his own box. He also scored what was a bullet header, but then followed it up with a big headed clearance moments later to deny Villa. His stats from the game are also really impressive. 3 clearances, 1 block shot, 1 interception, 3 tackles as well. He also showed how good his technical ability when he was in position out in those wide areas, with 2 out of 3 successful dribbles. And with Wolves not having much to play for now, it's nice to see some players putting in great solo displays and still fighting for the points that are up for grabs. Totti is still only 24 and may be starting to develop into an excellent Premier League defender here. And last but not least, Liverpool. They keep marching on. We thought this run could occur and they could have that final push for the Champions League places. I did a video talking about who I thought would get into the top four, breaking down every single game. And I did think that Liverpool would take the most points between now and the end of the season when it comes to those runners and riders. And they've got another 3 points here. 1-0 victory against Brentford. Such an important victory. 2.24 to 0.20. Brentford, of course, had a goal disallowed. Now, despite this being only a 1-0 victory for Liverpool, I think this may be one of the most important victories this season for a couple of reasons, and here's why. I thought Liverpool's repertoire of attack was excellent throughout the game, and that boiled down to their tactics, but also their team selection. Firstly, their approach in build-up play, or Trent being the deep-lying playmaker again. We've done a video on this if you haven't seen it as of yet, having a look at that role and why Trent is so fantastic in it. Make sure you check it out if you are a Liverpool fan, or if you just want to understand it a little bit more. And his passing range, in my opinion, it allows Liverpool to utilise Nunez from wide positions, and it allows him to make those secondary runs from out to in, where he's really, really devastating. And despite this chance not resulting in a goal, I thought the telepathy between the two and the understanding that they showed was really, really positive, and it could be an excellent tool for Liverpool now and in the future. Trent's freedom gives Liverpool that passing complexity that they miss when Thiago isn't there, and also allows them to have 4 attackers on the pitch during the game, as they did in this one. And this brings us on to the next point, which is focused about Liverpool having more than one dynamic to their attack. This scenario came from a goal kick from Aston, which displayed that they held a threat not only in build-up but also in their direct play. Brentford being overloaded via a simple goal kick isn't something you see often, so for Liverpool to do this demonstrates how Klopp is getting the best out of his new recruits. Finally, I think Brentford are running out of steam a little bit here. Liverpool were excellent for the most part, but Brentford only created 0.20 XG and subsequently only had 1 shot on target. I think that the minimal size of their squad is catching up to them a little bit, and that more depth is needed for those latter stages of the season, because at one point they did look like they had the opportunity to have a top 6 finish. It was certainly the Conference League, I know, was in the minds and hearts of Brentford fans. And with only Mbeumo and Tony up top and the wing-backs pinned back, I think they looked a little bit lightweight in attack, and with not much to call upon from the bench, I think it's something for them to consider in the summer when it comes to transfers and the next evolution of this Brentford Premier League journey. So that's my team according to that formation, but if I was really picking my team, it would be different. There's one man that has to be in this team of the season. He's been absolutely ridiculous. 28 goal contributions. 44% of the goals that this team have scored this season have come from this man. Must be in this team.